Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So welcome to another Sunday afternoon talk here during the Rains Retreat at Amaravati. So the theme for today's talk, if I remember, well, I have to remember, I've got it written down, is the human condition and its value for a moral life. So this is a opportunity to reflect on our experience in the human realm and its relationship to sila, to morality, and the benefits that can bring to our own experience and to the world at large. And maybe the first thing to speak about, the human condition or the human realm, in Buddhist cosmology, we speak of having 5 or 6 realms in the classical way of describing things. And these of these 6 realms, the human realm is one of those, the Manusa Loka. Then in the lower realms you have the animal realm, the Tirachana Loka, and then the hungry ghost realm, the Peta Loka, the hell realms, the Niraya Loka. Also the Asura Loka, the realm of the jealous deities. And then the Devaloka, the heavenly realms of the Devas and Brahmas. So sometimes the Asuras are left out, which I'm sure they're not happy about. But well, I suspect they're not happy about. But they're combined with the other realms. But usually there's these 6. So you have the human realm, Deva realm, animal realm, hungry ghost realm, hell realm, and the Asuras. So in the classical representation of these 6 realms, people have probably seen in different temples, different books about Buddhism, and also you find across the whole Buddhist world, from the southern Buddhist countries of Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, into China, Tibet, Japan, Korea. The same kind of image is represented, and it's a round shape held by a kind of demonic figure, and that round shape is sometimes representing it's held to represent a wheel, as in the wheel of birth and death, and sometimes it's interpreted or understood to be a mirror, and the being that's holding it up is Mahakala. Kala is time, so it's great time, and so essentially that the depiction is in the form of a mirror, is we're looking at the nature of our own mind, our own life, as depicted in these 6 realms. So it's, in a way, it's holding up a mirror to our experience of the world and our own life. So within those 6 realms, each one is characterized in different ways, and you have also symbolically you have a Buddha in each of the realms, and so that in the hell realms the Buddha is holding a flame. In the hungry ghost realm he's holding a bottle of nectar, some kind of nourishment. In the animal realm he's holding a book, a text to educate. In the Asura realm he's holding a sword. And in the heavenly realm, he's holding a veena, like a musical instrument, a sitar. And in the human realm, it's depicted as the Buddha on alms round, holding an alms bowl. Again, this varies a little bit from country to country, from culture to culture, but those are the basic images that you have. Even though in real life the Buddha wouldn't be holding a musical instrument, let alone a sword. But this is symbolically representing how wisdom can operate in each of these states of being, or these mind states, which the 6 realms represent, and that's the medium of communication, or the way that that wisdom can most effectively function in those different realms. So with respect to the human realm, the human condition, I won't spend the whole afternoon on the 6 realms, though one easily could, or the symbolism of the Bhavachaka, the wheel of becoming. But just to focus on the human realm, the Manusa Loka. So traditionally speaking, the characteristic of the human realm, or what makes one, say, living in the human realm, is the quality of virtue. So that in Buddhist psychology and cosmology, you can have a human body, you can be a pugala, have a human form, but not actually be living in the human realm. So if your mind is taken up with aggression and violence, and jealousy, then you might be spending most of your time in the asura realm. Or if you're suffering from various kinds of addiction, then you might spend most of your time in the hungry ghost realm. Or if you're driven by animal instincts of food and sex and territory and so forth, then you might be spending most of your time in the animal realm. So along with these different sort of cosmological realms, these are also representing mind states that we can get drawn into, and we can spend a lot of time abiding in those states. So the Manusa Loka, the human realm, is defined as one who lives according to at least the 5 precepts. So that's the characteristic of the Manusa Loka. And so it might be intimidating, or you might feel like, I got into Buddhism to get away from all this kind of moral judgment, Ajahn. But just letting you know how it's framed in terms of the Buddhist expression of things, what makes the human realm, the truly human, or the Manusa Loka, is that quality of virtue, the quality of sila. And so I find this is it's intimidating to our defilements, but it's, I think, refreshing to the heart. So that is I feel a helpful reflection. And so that say, a recognition of the human condition is not just a matter of having a human body, but what makes us truly human is our sense of respectfulness for other living beings, a appreciation for our actions, the words we say, the actions that we take, and the effect that those actions have upon our own life and upon the lives of other beings. So that what we can call a moral sensitivity, that's what makes us truly human, or helps us the mind to abide in the human realm and to be, say, embodying those truly human qualities. Maybe contemplating this theme, it also occurred to me that when we start talking about the 6 realms, and particularly when you talk about the lower realms, and when we speak about the animal realm as being one of the lower realms, especially in this country, growing up in a family of dog lovers, that's how my parents met. They were both dog lovers, so the dog breeders. So that's why I exist in the world, is because my parents both were bull terrier breeders. So I know that people sometimes exalt the animal state and say, well, Ajahn, how dare you put the animals down in the lower realm? That's really awful. You know, my cat is extremely wise. You need to meet. You should meet my cat, or my horse, or my dog. My dog is the most compassionate member of the family, and so I understand that's how we can relate to these animals that are close to us. But if we look at the animal world and see that apart from those pets and animals that live very, very close to human beings and have developed some human qualities, then it is a world with a lot of pain, a lot of brutality, and a lot of fear and instinct. Things driven by instinct. Like just this morning, I saw one of the monastery cats with a mouse in its mouth, and I had the suspicion that the cat was not empathizing with the life of the mouse that it had just killed and was carrying along. The cat looked, as far as one could tell from the outside, the cat looked extremely happy to be carrying that dead mouse along in its mouth. So a predator, in the animal world, a predator seemingly cannot develop empathy for the thing that they are predating upon, that the other things that are considered food, the other animals and beings that are considered food, a predator does not empathize with the predated. Again, you might, you're free to debate that, bring that up in terms of in the question time and in terms of your own perspective. But I would say when we really look at the world around us, we look at the animal realm, the birds and the creatures, the animal world that we're a part of, then that sense of being driven by instinct and a lack of ability to reflect upon your own condition or empathize with other beings outside of your own particular species, or even within your own species, I would say is much more challenged if we really look at how the animal world operates. So that's just more of a small aside. So in terms of the human condition, the human realm, the Manusaloka, and its relationship to virtue and sila, one of the things that's helpful to understand about sila is often we think of, well, the 5 precepts, that's these rules that we're supposed to keep. Panatipata, I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living being. So I refrain from killing things, from stealing things, from sexual misconduct, from lying, and from using intoxicants. And so we think of sila as being the precepts, the rules that we are kind of quote unquote supposed to keep. But I feel it's helpful to understand there's really 2 dimensions to sila. At least 2 dimensions. So one of them is the sikkhapada, the actual spelling out of the behaviors that the behaviors that are encouraged and the behaviors that are discouraged. So like refraining from killing living beings, from stealing, from sexual misconduct, from lying, and so forth. But it's the other dimension is what is called in Pali the guna Dhamma, the actual quality of virtue, the quality of goodness, that in your heart which loves the good. So that's not a rule, that's a quality of your own heart. That's your own, say, feeling for goodness and kindness and respectfulness for the lives of other beings, the property and the social space and the well-being of other creatures, other beings. And I feel it's important to understand when we talk about sila, it's not just a set of rules, but most importantly, at its very heart, there is the guna dhamma, this quality of goodness, or what's called the love of the good, if you like. In Western philosophy, there's a word that's rarely used, but it's there in the English language, which is synderesis, which comes from the Greek, and it literally means that the love of goodness. So it's that feeling in the heart, that which rejoices in kindness, in honesty, in harmlessness, in respectfulness, in those human qualities. It's that in the heart which says, yes, how beautiful, how noble, how inspiring, how gladdening to see human kindness, human goodness, and skillfulness in our relationships. So I acknowledge it's not a very common word, but I feel it's very very useful to consider that quality of the love of the good. That's what lies at the heart of the precepts. So that's what, when we recite those 5 precepts, for example, it's spelling out. If we draw upon our own heart of hearts, if we draw upon our own sort of fundamental nature, then this is how we will behave. This is you wouldn't be inclined to take the life of anything. You wouldn't be inclined to take the property of others. You wouldn't be inclined to be, say, taking advantage of somebody or deceiving others in your relationships. You wouldn't be able to tell a lie. You wouldn't consciously deceive, or you wouldn't be drawn towards intoxication and distraction of that nature. So that the precepts, in a way, are spelling out our own true heart's disposition. That's how they work. So sometimes when I'm giving the leading the ceremony and having this procedure every Sunday morning we have here, and in many monasteries, temples around the world, it happens very, very regularly. Sometimes I'll say that the actual say heart of that process is really just in the word namo. I pay homage. That laying down your self-centered perspective before the reality of Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. So in a way, it's like I am bowing down. I'm putting my self-centered habits I'm letting go of those in order for the heart to embody that quality of wakeful awareness, to take refuge in wakeful awareness, to embody that noble enlightened quality of our own hearts. And then if that gesture of namo, of homage to reality, if that alone is not enough, then spell it out, Namo Tassa Bhagavata, homage to the blessed, noble and perfectly enlightened one, homage to the Buddha. If that's not enough, then spell it out in terms of, okay, that if you tease out the detail of that, it's homage to the quality of awakened awareness, to the Buddha, to the fundamental reality of things, to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha, that which is, that which unites us, that which is the love of the good. And if spelling it out in terms of taking the three refuges, determining the three refuges isn't enough, then spelling it out in terms of the 5 precepts. Okay, if we are going to be awake, if the heart is going to be in tune with reality, then this is what we will do. We will not deliberately take the life of another living being. We won't take a property that doesn't belong to us. We won't take advantage of others or be dishonest in our relationships. We won't tell lies, and we won't be drawn towards intoxicants. So the very heart of it is just that namo, the letting go of self-centered perspectives, and to attune the heart to reality, and essentially to its own reality. Another place that this is described, or you find this represented, that I find very, very helpful, very inspiring in the scriptures. There's a couple of dialogues in the numerical discourses, the Book of the Nines, where the Buddha is meeting with a couple of different wanderers, so sannyasins, yogis of different religious groups, and they're quite brief teachings, but they're Sutta number 7 and Sutta number 8 in the Book of the Nines, if you want to look these up. So the first one, the Buddha's talking to a wanderer called Suttava, and he's describing the natural disposition of an enlightened being. So, and I feel this is helpful because it's describing, well, when the mind is totally enlightened, this is its inclination. And so he says that one who is totally enlightened, an arahant, they cannot deliberately take life of another living being. They can't do it. Like the hand cannot move to squash the mosquito. It cannot take that action to deliberately take the life of another being. They can't steal anything. They can't take the property that belongs to another being. They are completely uninterested in any kind of sexual activity. They are naturally celibate. That is not something that is appealing or interesting or meaningful in their relationships. They cannot tell a lie. The tongue can't form an untruth. They cannot tell a deliberate lie. So those first 4 are the same as the first 4 of the 8 precepts. And then interestingly, the 5th precept, you think, okay, now he's going to get onto alcohol and drugs, but he doesn't. So the 5th one, when he's talking to Suttava and then to the other wanderer, says the 5th one, very interestingly, is about renunciation and accumulation. He says, well, one who is enlightened, an arahant, cannot lay up a store for the future, so that you naturally just live on what things you have for the moment, and let the morrow take care of itself, as I think it says in the New Testament of the Bible, that you don't keep a stash of things just in case I might need in the future, but an arahant, an enlightened being, is ready to rely on whatever for their physical support on whatever the universe offers that particular day. So to me, that's an interesting reflection on renunciation and faith in the world. And then so that's the first 5, and then the last 4 when he's talking to Suttava, he says, an enlightened one has unshakable faith in the Buddha and the Dhamma and Sangha, in awakened awareness, in the ultimate reality of things, and in the reality of virtue and the value, the goodness of virtue. And if they are already a monastic, they cannot deliberately turn away from monastic life. So that some of you might have questions to ask about that, but in the context of the teaching, it says one who's an arahant who's gone forth as a nun or as a monk, they cannot be inclined to relinquish the robe and go back to lay life. You might think of that as a put down on lay life, but it's there in the scriptures, so it's, I think, worthy of consideration and reflection. That having gone forth, there's no appeal to going back to the lay life. So then, in the dialogue with Suttava, the next one along, it's very, very similar. The first four are the same. The first five are the same, but then the last four on the list of 9 qualities are that an arahant cannot be motivated by sense desire, they cannot be motivated by aversion, they cannot be motivated by delusion or by fear. These are the 4 biases, so raga, dosa, moha, and bhaya. So they can't be motivated by sense desire, by ill will, by delusion, or by fear. So there's a slight difference between the two. So that, to me, that I find that really interesting to reflect upon, because it's saying if the mind is enlightened. So in a way, arahants aren't keeping rules. That's the disposition. An arahant is not trying to restrain the urge to take life or to tell a lie. It's like it's not there. That if the heart is completely free of greed, hatred, and delusion, that's how it naturally operates. So I feel that, if we relate to virtue, if we really open the heart and to awaken to this human condition, the reality of our life, then that is the result of it, is that we will be naturally respectful of all other life. We'll be naturally honest, naturally respectful of the property and personal space of others. It would be impossible to take advantage or to deceive others deliberately. So I feel like that's helpful to understand. And it's also interesting how in the books of the Vinaya, a monastic discipline, where it literally has about 10,000 rules, sort of listed in great detail, one of the books of the 5 main books of the Vinaya discipline, and some people feel this is actually the very first of the 5. It's called the Mahavagga, the Great Chapter. And the first 60 or 70 pages are the stories is the story of the Buddha's enlightenment. So it's saying all these rules, all these do's and don'ts, every single detail of these sort of 10,000 things that are listed here, they all come from, they're all based upon the enlightened mind, the mind of the awakened Buddha. So the fact that the discipline begins with that story of the Buddha's enlightenment, I feel very symbolic of saying, if we are truly awake, if we're embodying wakeful awareness, if in each moment we're truly awake, then we live naturally in a harmless, honest, kindly and simple way. We are respectful of all other life. We are living as a very well-rounded and respectful, responsible human being in this human realm. But having said that, there's a reason why we keep repeating these precepts every week or every day or very, very regularly. Even as monastics, we recite our whole monastic rule. Not all 10,000 rules, but the nuns have about 150, the monks have 227. We recite them every fortnight, and with the lay people here, we have this ceremony of them being recited every Sunday morning. But we recite the words of them because we forget. We're not totally awakened all of the time. We get lost, we get distracted, we get confused, we get worried, we get busy. And so that there's a reason why we have these ceremonies where we are going through it, because we're not totally awake, we're not totally attuned to life. And so we re-establish an intention or a clarity around those behaviors. So I feel the Buddha was an extraordinarily gifted reader of human nature. He really understood people and the practical realities of the human world very, very well. So these ceremonies that he brought into being in order for us to be, say, encouraged. So if you're not totally awake and totally enlightened, and those behaviors don't come naturally, if you adopt the behaviors, then it helps you to attune to your own heart of hearts. It kind of leads in, it's a sort of two-way traffic. It leads, by adopting the behavior, it helps you to recognize, oh, this is what it's like to not tell lies. I don't have any regrets. This is what it's like to be non-violent in my relationships, and respectful towards other living beings. Oh, right, it has this really good result. Yes. So that by adopting the behavior, it helps us to recognize and awaken to that inner quality. So in another passage from the sutras I like to quote very often, it talks about the Buddha's establishment of the 8 precepts as an observance for the moon days. And this is, again, it's in a few places, but in the numerical discourses, the Book of the Threes, Sutta number 70, if you look it up, that's a long sutta, but it's in there. And the Buddha says, so on the moon days, on these regular sort of weekly observance days, wouldn't it be a good idea for the lay community to undertake the precept of not taking life, not to deliberately take the life of another living being? In that way, they will be living as the Arahants do, and that will be for their long-lasting welfare and happiness. And then so too with all of the 8 precepts, so to not take the things that are not given to us, to not engage in sexual activity, to not tell lies, to not use intoxicants, to not eat outside of the morning time, to not seek entertainment, beautification, adornment, and to not seek a super kind of comfortable or luxurious sleeping place. And so he says, if a layperson adopts this behavior, they are living as the Arahants do, and that will be for their long-lasting welfare and happiness. And he says that this is how, and if the oppositor, if the moon days are followed in this way, this makes them extraordinarily beneficial, extraordinarily sort of meritorious and brilliant, radiant and liberating. And he points out this is to use this standard of conduct and to take this on as a practice. This is far more beneficial than having enormous wealth or even being born in the heavenly realms, that kind of thing. So he praises it very, very strongly. So I feel that's also a helpful principle to bear in mind, that by adopting the precepts, then you're undertaking the behavior of an Arahant. So you're living as the Arahants do. So it's a way of attuning, taking that standard and then tapping into that, which is already within us, but which gets lost, gets overlaid by our list of things to do, by our squabbles with our family members or tensions in the workplace, our worries about the society or the government or the planet, our irritations, our fears, those biases, our delusions and attachment to our opinions and preferences. So by adopting those precepts, by listening to them, taking them in, and following those behaviors, it helps us to tap into that pure heart that's always here, but easily gets forgotten, gets missed, gets overlaid. So then going back to the 5 precepts, then also I feel it's helpful to consider, okay, if we take those on as a standard, how do they work? And not just relating to them as a set of shoulds and shouldn'ts. This is the rule you should follow, and if you follow it, you're good, and if you don't follow it, you're bad. But I feel it's helpful to understand why the Buddha highlighted these particular areas and how they work and what use they have for us. So looking at this also, because I studied Western psychology many years ago. Before I was a monk, I did a degree at London University, psychology and physiology, and so I have a small amount of background in that area. And so one of the things of looking at the 5 precepts in particular that was really striking was how this is ways of what I call ring fencing the reptile brain. So that the reptile brain, the kind of the sort of pre-conceptual aspect of the brain, that which is to do with food, territory, sex, sleep, personal space, and property, ownership. These are all non-conceptual areas of the brain. So the animal impulses, or what we call is colloquially known as the reptile brain, and these are very strong forces within us. The forces that you might feel it's a bit insulting. Say, well, I'm better than that, Ajahn. Don't call me a reptile. But I would say we all experience these aspects of our brains, our animal ancestry of this body and this mind. And that what the Buddha was doing by establishing the 5 precepts is like, this is where we most easily get lost. This is where the reptile brain can easily, the instinctual reactive aspect of the brain, that's where it can take over, and we get lost. So by establishing these precepts, then when there are aggressive impulses, when you feel aversive, or that something's in your way, or that it's bothering you, or you want to get something, that you are, rather than killing that thing that's in your way or that's bothering you, like a mosquito, or wanting to kill something so that you can eat it, or to kill something that you feel is intruding upon your territory, like green fly on your roses, or mosquitoes into your home, or slugs onto your lettuces, and so on. That there's that precept is reminding us that it's not just your preference, your sense of territory, or your comfort that's in play here. There's also the life of this other living being, and all beings love life and fear death, even if they're very simple, being like a slug or a mosquito, let alone your more complex creatures. So that again, this can be discussed in the question time, but I feel this is a helpful model that because the 5 precepts, first of all, panatipata, I undertake the precept to not take the life of any living creature, and so that even if something is invading your space, even if it's something that you might want to hunt and eat, then it's like, well, that being loves life and fears death. So what right do I have to see that my life is more important than theirs, or that why should I create these feelings of fear and terror as this being meets the end of its life in a painful way, just because of my preference, my territory, my feelings or my appetites. So it's counteracting that urge to aggress or to kill, just for our own preference, our own convenience, our own habits. And so that those impulses of aggression within us are very natural. They're very ordinary, very familiar to us. It's Saturday afternoon at the moment, so all kinds of sports games are going on. Many football matches are probably being played at this moment. This is sort of channeled aggression or ritualized combat, I would say, that takes place. I'm not anti-sports or competitive sports. I used to be a sports person myself. I was in the rugby team and a competitive runner as well. So I understand that the realm of sports, but it's kind of the competitiveness and aggression being channeled in hopefully more humane and less destructive ways. But it's those forces are very powerful within us, and so that to take the precept to not kill is a buffering and protecting the heart from acting on those aggressive, destructive, competitive impulses in that way. So the second precept, adina dana, I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given, is respecting the sense of ownership, people's sense of this belongs to me, this is mine, my objects, my property, my space, and so that even though we might have philosophical ideas like all property is theft, if I want it, I'll take it, then the laws of most countries and most societies around the world say, no, this one belongs to person A and that one doesn't, and this one belongs to you. So respect their sense of ownership. So again, even though we might be attracted to some object or some territory or something, that we buffer that urge to acquire, to get for our own preference, our own advantage, something that belongs to somebody else or is owned by another being. The third precept is about sexuality, mostly about sexuality. The actual text of it is Kame Sumi Chachara, which means I undertake the precept to refrain from unskillful action or wrong action with relationship to sensuality. So it's usually translated as refraining from sexual misconduct, but it's in the wording of it is broader than that. It's any kind of excessive sensual indulgence or indulgence that's going to be taking advantage of others or deceiving others or causing harm to other beings or causing harm to yourself. So that again, it's respecting, just as the first two precepts are about aggression and say the destructive impulse. The second one is about ownership and the acquisitive impulse, the desire to get and to have. The third is about mostly about sexual desire and the desire for sensual pleasure, and that there's many teachings that relate to the power of that within our minds. We don't have to look very far to see how within society, not just in the UK, but all around the world, this has a tremendously potent presence in the lives of most people, many people. And going back to the numerical discourses, this, Sutta number 1, in the Book of the Ones, as I recall, is where the Buddha says, there's nothing more compelling to the mind, and this is very sort of heteronormative, but there's nothing more compelling to the mind of a man than the sight, smells, a taste, and touch of a woman. And then Sutta number 2 is, there's nothing more compelling to a woman than the sight, smell, taste, touch of a man. In one of the northern tradition suttas, the Sutra of 42 sections, one of the sutras in that, one of the sections of that sutra. Yeah. Please come in if you wish to. Yeah. The Sutra of 42 sections, it says, sexual desire is the most powerful force in the universe. If there were two forces as powerful as this, there would be no hope for any being to ever escape from samsara. Which is quite a statement. It's like, okay, buckle up, This is a challenge. So so that I feel is these are impactful teachings. The whole way the Book of Numerical Discourses opens, which is a sort of 2,000-page tome, and that particular section of the Sutra of 42 sections, it says, okay, this is powerful. This is important. Get prepared to work with this in a skillful way, because this is something that's got a very significant impact in the lives of living beings. The fourth precept is about lying. Musavada viratmani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. And this, interestingly enough, one of the passages from the Jataka stories, the stories of the Buddha's previous lives that I like to quote, which is, I find very significant, very meaningful, is there's a statement in one of the Jatakas where it says, throughout the countless previous lives of the Bodhisattva, the numerous thousands, millions and millions of lifetimes of the Bodhisattva, since the Bodhisattva Gautama took the vow at the feet of the Buddha Dipankara, and over countless lifetimes, he deliberately took life, he killed other living beings, he stole, he engaged in sexual misconduct, he abducted other people's partners, and he used intoxicants. But during all of those lifetimes, those countless millions of lifetimes, he never told a deliberate lie, because to deliberately tell a lie is completely antithetical, goes totally against the Dhamma. And so it's only a short passage, but I feel that's extremely significant. And in a way, it highlights lying as a sort of cardinal, say, defilement. And when we think about lying in terms of the reptile brain, you think, well, reptiles don't even talk to each other very much. So how is lying involved with the reptile brain? What's that got to do with ring fencing the reptiles? But if you think about it, if you consider it, lying is the way that we seek personal advantage. We tell untruths to get something for me, to make something go my way. Again, this is just sort of my reflections on it, so people, it's open for discussion. But that bending the world to meet my wishes, my needs, my preferences, my opinions, that's why we lie, to get things to go my way. And so that I feel is a particularly significant area. Also in the suttas of the Majjhima Nikaya, there's a couple of places where the Buddha is giving instruction to his son Rahula, and the one is when he's quite young, about 7 or 8 years old, seemingly, and the other when he's a teenager. And the sutta, the teaching he gives to his son Rahula when he's a little boy, when he's 7 or 8 years old, is all about lying, or not lying, really. And how to deliberately tell a lie, even for a joke, is something that should be avoided. And that's the only recorded teaching of the Buddha giving to his young son. That's what it focuses on. It's completely about not lying and respect for truth and so on. It's also going back to our Vinaya discipline. Many years ago, during this rains retreat period, we have Vinaya classes. And one year I was invited to lead the Vinaya teaching here at Amaravati, probably 1986 or 87. And as I was sort of going through the Vinaya Pitaka and preparing these different classes and different presentations, and it's about food, about sexuality, about property, about money, about looking after your robes, many different areas of our lives. I began to notice that about 75% of the monastic rules can be broken by speech, not just by deliberate action, by physical action, but by either getting someone, telling someone to do something, or using your speech for a rule to be gone against. And I thought that this is significant, that because it's not just the action that you take, say, like killing another living being. If you persuade another monk to kill an animal, then you, as the one who's doing the persuading, are also liable as well as the monk who took the other creature's life. So if we look at that, we consider, well, that speech is an extremely significant area of our lives. Also, it's the main way in which we communicate and we relate to other human beings, either through vocal speech or through written speech, putting comments on people's blogs as well as making phone calls and talking to people in your family across the dinner table. There's many ways that we can use words in relationship to each other. So I feel that ring fencing that particular reptile is extremely significant. Also, as a very wordy person myself, and somewhat inclined to bending the truth for the sake of a good story for much of my lifetime, it's been particularly significant for me to try and train speech to be honest and to be true. And then, interestingly enough, the fifth precept, the one against I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming alcohol and drugs which lead to carelessness. That is in a slightly different category than the first four. So the first four precepts, the refraining from killing living beings, from taking what's not given, from sexual misconduct and from lying, they are called pakati sila, or natural sila. So in any culture, anywhere around the planet, in any human society, if those actions are taken deliberately and intentionally, there will necessarily be some kind of negative consequence. That there will be some kind of painful result for you, for the doer, as well as the being that's on the receiving end of the action. So those are called pakati sila, or natural sila. And then sila, like say, not eating in the evening, or celibacy, or not using entertainments or personal decoration. Those are called panati sila, or proscribed or agreed precepts. So they are a behavior that we can follow for a personal kind of training, but they're not naturally karmically destructive. So like eating supper is not intrinsically bad karma. You'll be pleased to hear. So vikala bhojana, the sixth precept, in the 8 precepts, it's an extra kind of training that we can take on. So that comes in the category of panati sila, or agreed precepts. But the first 4 are natural precepts. So any culture, anywhere on the planet, if we deliberately take life, there's going to be a painful result that comes from that. So the 5th, going back to the 5th precept, so that is in the category of panati sila. It's not one of the natural precepts. So it's not intrinsically karmically destructive to drink alcohol. So you might think, oh, that's interesting. Or like, oh, don't say that, Ajahn. I've been trying to persuade my wife to keep off the bottle, and you just ruined the whole program. Or my husband, or whoever. So, the reason why the 5th precept is there, and in a way it's kind of more important than 1, 2, 3, and 4, is because once the 5th precept is broken, or we go against that, then 1, 2, 3, and 4 have a much shorter half-life. It's like in the Jurassic Park movie when a hole gets knocked in the fence around the reptiles, around the dinosaurs. Once the fence comes down, then all the dinosaurs can run freely. So drinking alcohol knocks a hole in the fence, and so that's a reason why many people drink alcohol, is to take the fence down, to be uninhibited, to be able to act and speak freely. So those of us who don't drink alcohol or don't use drugs in this kind of way, it's quite easy to notice. And again, people might wish to debate this, but in the very, very rare occasions where I'm around people who are drinking alcohol, even just a little bit, even just like half a glass or a glass of wine or something, it's very visible, very noticeable how much someone's behavior changes in a detrimental way, I would say, after just a few drinks. Well, you're sober and the other person's drinking. And I drank a lot before I was a monk, so you might feel like you're being wonderfully brilliant, so displaying dazzling repartee and being thoroughly charming and amusing, but from the outside you can be looking more and more like a complete idiot without realizing it, or more childish or more foolish, and so that even though the 5th precept is not intrinsically karmically destructive like the first 4 are, as I say, dutiyampi, I would say it's almost more important than the others, because once we've had a few drinks or we've taken some intoxicants, then our capacity to be mindful and to not be acting on impulse in terms of aggression or competition or sexual desire or dishonesty is greatly strengthened. We are much more likely to act in those ways driven by the reptile brain. There's a gap in the fence, so the reptiles of aggression and acquisition and sexual desire and self-advantage, they can run freely and maybe say, well, actually, the dinosaurs, they deserve to run freely too. Look at the other movies when they were doing whatever they wanted to do. Okay, all analogies are partial, so I acknowledge that. But in terms of reflecting on the human condition and the precepts, I feel that this is why the precepts are there. They are helping us to recognize the damage that we cause in our own life and the world around us, the people around us, when they are not followed, and then the blessings that come when they are followed. So again, it's not just keeping rules for the sake of having rules, like some sort of Victorian moralist sort of diktat, kind of, and threat of punishment if we break the rules, but rather helping us to draw upon our own pure heart, our own goodness, that synderesis, that love of the good within our own hearts. So then, in terms of the value to in our human life, just at the end of the little ceremony we do on Sunday morning, there's a verse that is recited. Imani panchasikāpadani. These are the 5 precepts. Silena sugating yanti. The precepts lead to happiness, sukati. Silena bhoga sampada, the precepts lead to true wealth, to abundant wealth. Silena nibhutinganti, the precepts lead to peacefulness. And so the value in terms of our lives is happiness. It says, bhoga sampada literally means abundant wealth, but I'd like to think of this in terms of a great contentment, that you're happy with what you've got. You're not in a state of wanting and lack and constantly needing more stuff. It's a lack of neediness. So the quality of punna, the punna Dhamma, the fullness of heart, rather than winning the lottery and having piles of money, more money than you know what to do with. Bhoga sampada doesn't really mean having more money than you know what to do with. It means that, I would say, that quality of fullness, of contentment. And then nibhuti, peacefulness, coolness. There's an easefulness that comes when we keep the precepts. So that's recited as a little verse, and I will translate that and point that out. If we live in this way that is respectful and kindly, harmless, and responsible, and then these are the natural results. It brings happiness, it brings contentment, it brings peacefulness, and it's a great blessing for us. Another of the suttas I like to quote is called the 8 Streams of Merit, again from the Numerical Discourses, the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Eights. And this is the Abhisanda Sutta, the rewards or the results of skillfulness. Sutta number 39 in the Book of the Eights. I couldn't tell you what Sutta 38 is, so don't be too impressed. Or I couldn't tell you what 40 is, but this was 39. So sometimes people think I know every single sutta in all the, because I'll quote a number, but it's very specific, the ones I've got acquainted with and I've memorized. So in this, the 8 streams of merit, the first 3 are unwavering faith in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. It's a great stream of merit, of blessing, of goodness and delight in one's life. And then the latter 5 are the 5 precepts. And the way the Buddha speaks about the 5 precepts, he said, if one undertakes to not deprive other living beings of life, then you give immeasurable, incalculable freedom from fear, freedom from distress, freedom from anxiety to incalculable beings, and in turn you bring incalculable freedom from distress, freedom from fear, freedom from anxiety to yourself as well. So it's a great gift that is being made. So these are called the 5 Mahadana. So similarly with not taking what is not given, to refraining from sexual misconduct, from refraining from lying, and refraining from intoxicants. And he says, these 5 standards have been praised by the wise from ancient times. They are sort of immovably, unshakably valuable in all situations. And so they've been praised and acknowledged and they admired by wise people from the most ancient times, and they are similarly streams of merit, streams of blessing. So in this respect, rather than just thinking of the 5 precepts as don't do this, don't do that, like no, but rather it's a gift. It's called Abhayadana, the gift of fearlessness, so that when you are honest, then people in your family know, oh, you're one that people can trust you. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. If you say you're not going to do it, you won't do it. People know that you're not deceiving them for any kind of self-advantage. You're not trying to get anything from them. That in the workplace, in the family, in society, you become someone who is a blessing to have around. The beings know they don't need to be afraid of you. The animals in your garden, I often point out that the animals that live in monasteries the wild animals tend to get pretty lazy because they know the 2-leggeds are not going to be harmful. In the early days at Chithurst, the farmer next door claimed the right to come onto the Chithurst property and gas the rabbits in the rabbit warren along the western border of the property, because he thought the rabbits were coming onto his property and destroying his crops. So he said he's got the right to come and gas the rabbits, and if we object, then he'll take us to court. So then we built a rabbit fence to keep the rabbits in, rather than to keep the rabbits out. Normally you build a rabbit fence to protect your property. We built a rabbit fence at Chithurst, and it was by far the biggest expense that had been made at Chithurst in those early days. It was something like £700, which was a big part of our budget in those early days of Chithurst. But we thought, we've got to protect the lives of these rabbits. So we made this great effort. And one of the Anagarikas had experience as a fencer in the fence building when he grew up in New Zealand, so he could guide us in the art of fence building and putting in a rabbit fence. But he said he'd never done one for keeping rabbits in rather than keeping rabbits out. But we felt very happy about that. So we felt great, and the rabbits were very happy too. Sometimes you'd find them, they wouldn't even sit up to be nibbling on the grass. They'd be lying down on their side, just going. Like they're at a Roman banquet, they couldn't even bother to sit up straight to eat the grass. They just, and you kind of walk by and they kind of give you half an eyeball and just let you go past, and they wouldn't even bother to get up and run away. So that's very pleasing, very delightful that they feel so safe and life is so secure for them. So abhayadana is one of the great gifts. It's one of the value of sila in our lives, in the human realm. And also there's another particular teaching, again in the numerical discourses, so lots of quotes from the Anguttara today. So sutta number 2 in the Book of the Tens, and the Buddha and this teaching is known, liberation is a natural process. And it starts off by the Buddha saying, one who adheres to the moral precepts, there's no need for them to have the thought, may I be free from remorse, may I have no regrets, avipatisara. There's no need for them to think, may I be free from regret, free from remorse, free from self-criticism, because one who lives according to the precepts, they're naturally free of remorse. If you haven't done anything that's regrettable, you don't have any regrets. Painfully simple psychology. And again, there might be a few therapists and psychologists here saying, well, Ajahn, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. But according to the precepts, the teachings, and this is how it works. So there's no need to think, may I be free from remorse. One who is free from remorse, there's no need for them to think, may I experience joy or delight, pamoja. It's natural, if you're free of remorse, to feel self-respect, delight, that easefulness. If there's that quality of pamoja, then it's natural to feel piti or rapture that arises. If there is joyfulness and rapture, and there's no need for them. There's no need for you to think, may my body be relaxed, kaya pasambati. One who has self-respect, who feels delight and joyfulness, their body is relaxed. They are at ease. One whose body is relaxed, kaya pasambati. There's no need for them to think, may I experience profound contentment, sukha, because it's natural for one whose body is relaxed, they feel sukha, contentment, happiness. One who experiences sukha, happiness, contentment, there's no need for them to think, may my mind be concentrated, may there be samadhi, because it's natural for one whose mind is contented, who is happy, their mind is easily concentrated. One whose mind is concentrated, for whom there is samadhi, there's no need for them to think, may knowledge and vision of the way things are, may insight arise, because yatha bhutang jnanarasnang, knowledge and vision of the way things are, naturally arises from one whose mind is concentrated. And for one in whom insight has arisen, there's no need for them to think, may I let go, may there be dispassion and relinquishment, may there be a letting go, disentanglement, viraga and nibbutthi, peacefulness, because it's natural for one who sees the way things are, they let go. There's a disentanglement, there's peacefulness. And one whose mind is embodying peacefulness and disentanglement, dispassion, then there's a need for them to think, may knowledge and vision of liberation arise, because the vimutti jnana dasana, knowledge and vision of liberation, will naturally arise in one who lets go, one whose heart is unentangled. So, again, in terms of value, starting off with virtue at the root, the result is liberation, vimutti, and that I would say that's a greatly valuable aspect of fulfilling the potential of this human condition. Maybe the last thing in the last minute to add is that, in particular about the Manusaloka, Buddhas always appear, the last life of the Bodhisattva is always in the human realm, because the human realm is the perfect mixture of divinity and of happiness and unhappiness, of dukkha and sukha. It's like the warm tide pools between the sea and the shore. It's like the most fertile ground for wisdom to arise. You have the body of an animal and the mind of a god. And so this is the ideal territory for Buddhas to arise. It's a mixture of sukha and dukkha. The heavenly realms is too much happiness and not enough dukkha. The animal realm, the lower realms, too much dukkha, not enough happiness. The human realm, there's the perfect balance. And if it's the Manusaloka, then the quality of virtue is the ground. On that ground of virtue, then the mixture of happiness and unhappiness, sukha and dukkha, is the perfect recipe for wisdom to arise. So that's why, at least mythologically, cosmologically, Buddhas are always have their last life in the human realm. Buddhas arise in the human realm. So I offer these thoughts for consideration this afternoon. So it always takes a little while for people to reconvene, but I think we can begin. So there's a couple of microphones there, so if anyone who would like to ask a question, if you can use the microphone so everyone can hear your question, that would be much appreciated.
Ajahn, thanks for talk. It's very beneficial. First to confess, before knowing Buddha's teachings, I did a lot of miserable things in my life. After learning Buddha's teachings, intellectually, I know the path. So what shall I do? But as lay people, you know, there are a lot of things you need to do, and it's kind of your responsibility, duty. So maybe, you know, you have to look after the garden, right? Mow the lawn. And when you do that thing, you know, cleaning weeds and trim the grass, and accidentally beings die. So I don't know, you know, what is your advice, how to deal with that feeling?
Good question. You're not the first person to ask that. So, in terms of sila, intention is a central feature. So if your intention in mowing the grass is how many living beings can I make miserable, and how many lives can I destroy, then that's a very unskillful intention. If it's I need to mow my grass because I need to get on well with my family and the neighbors, and everyone else has got their grass mown, and if I don't, then it causes conflict and difficulty. Therefore, in order to sustain harmony with my neighbors, with my family, then it's probably good to mow the grass. So there's still some destruction of life involved, but the intention is just to be fitting in with people. Well, like when you drive a car, inevitably insects get killed on the windscreen, on the headlights, on the front of the car. I don't know anybody who gets into a car and thinks, how many insects can I kill today? No, you get in the car in order to get from A to B. That's your purpose. It's unfortunate that the action brings about the death of living beings, but it's not your intention. So the Buddha set up the monastic life as a way of living to be as harmless as possible in the living world, and so that as a monk, my precepts prevent me from even breaking a blade of grass. If it's a blade of grass sitting in a flower vase, that's okay. If it's growing in the ground, if it's a growing plant, I can't even break a leaf, can't pluck a blackberry. So in blackberry season, we have to, as a bhikkhu, we have to walk past the blackberry bushes, and you can't pick a blackberry and you certainly can't eat it. So that there's an element of renunciation, but also an element of respectfulness. Not everybody needs to live as a monastic, but the Buddha set up this way of life for those who have particularly strong feelings and concerns in those areas, then you can live in a way where it's as gentle upon the earth as possible. Necessarily, by having a living body, other living beings, their lives get damaged by us, and that's part of the results of birth. But if we look at our intention, then if the intention is to be as harmless and as respectful as possible, then that's the best we can do. So in terms of people's livelihoods and the welfare of the planet, then these are also concerns or sort of value of living according to Sila and living in an honest way, a respectful way, a harmless way. Then the livelihood that we choose, the decisions that we make during the course of a day, we can, without making ourselves neurotic, you can consider, okay, how much is this contributing to the well-being of the planet, and how much is it causing harm? And to be weighing those kind of things up, and then letting that sense of attunement to the living system be what guides our words, our actions, our choices, and where we live, what we do. And there's always compromises that we're making, just that by being alive, by washing your hands, the microbes on your skin. If you use hand sanitizer, then that brings them to an end. But there's a compromise that because of the need to, say, when we had the COVID pandemic, to be living responsibly with other human beings, like you need to use hand sanitizer all the time, even though the little bacteria are saying that they're not that they would say anything, but they're not happy about their life coming to an end. So the element of intention is the central piece. So again, talking about our Vinaya discipline, there are a few rules that you can break without intention, but almost always, like 99.999%, it's like if there is no intention, there's no offense. If there's not an intention to harm or to tell an untruth or to take something that's not given, then it's not an offense. It's good to consider that in terms of weighing up your own life and the decisions you need to make as a layperson. What's the intention here? What's the central motivation? Okay.
Thank you.
So, please, any other questions?
Are you listening to me? Yeah. Thank you very much for your talk, Ajahn. Deepening a little bit more this question. So, when we are in extreme situations, for instance, if I have to lie to save another life, what counts is the intention. Is that? Or even with little creatures, if there is, I don't know how to say it in English, lots of little creatures that can come into our houses and disturb very much the family, it's okay to make, and we can't defend, only put that defenses. It's okay to do something else. Or even with people, when a person is attacking, like sometimes we know it happened, someone is attacking a school. Okay, in this case, is okay to maybe hurt or something like that person?
Yeah, certainly if you there's a number of different questions there, but the intention is the key thing, and then respect for the life. Putting yourself into the position of that moth that is fluttering around your lamp, or the ants that have found their way into your kitchen. It's like, there's lots of ants in the kitchen. How can I persuade them to go somewhere else? So that then you're respecting the lives of those other creatures as much as possible, trying to persuade them to go somewhere else, or to obstruct their entrance into the house, or preventing the slugs from getting into your lettuces with little copper fences, or different ways and means that people can use, that's totally appropriate. Like the ring fencing the reptiles. Taking the precepts is in a way spelling it out. Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. That's like locking your door to help people not just wander into your home or to keep the slugs out of your lettuces. So that taking reasonable precautions to protect your body, yourself, your family, the property, and so on. Having the respect for the lives of the other beings in mind, and just to ask that question: why is my life more important than yours, or why is my personal space more important than your life? And just to ask that question in a sincere way, and then let your actions come from that. There's no fixed formula for what I should do. It's because life is very mobile and fluid. It's changing. So there is no the right thing. So if you say, if someone comes in and I've wondered when there's been various attacks in this country or in other countries, what would I do if somebody came into the temple wielding a gun? What would I do? I have thought about that, and these kind of the big cushions that we have. I thought, well, maybe I could pick up that big triangular cushion and just approach at speed. My rugby playing background might come into action at that point. I'm quite wide, so I could replay my. I mean, it was 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. I last played rugby. I think I was about 18 in my last rugby game. Well, that's 50 years ago. So, but you can draw upon resources. So to make a loud noise, take action, and to obstruct someone who's trying to cause harm, fine. To me, you're respectful of their life. You're not trying to hurt them, but you're also trying to stop them from hurting other people. So I'd say that's quite reasonable, but exactly what you might do in any situation you can't predict. It's like when Lumpur Sumedho would often describe how when he was a student in University of California in Berkeley, there was a strong pacifist movement. It was still at the end of it was still in the Cold War period in the late 50s, early 60s, and so there was this dialogue going on people challenging those who were pacifists. What would you do if a maniac attacks your mother? And so that was a kind of standard question that people would ask if you were promoting pacifism or non-aggression or not getting into the escalating arms race with the Soviet Union and so on. And so in a number of Dhamma talks, Lumpur has pointed out, saying, I realize that's an unfair question. It took me a few years to get to realize, because I don't know what I would do. I trust that I would be mindful, and that, but I don't know, and nobody has attacked my mother with me being in the room, so I can't say what I would do. And he said that, and I thought it was a very good answer. You don't know what you'd do. Maybe you could switch the lights off. Maybe you could make a loud noise, or you could all kinds of ways that you might be able to defuse the situation, change the dynamic. You don't know. And so he said, I don't know what I would do, but I know I would be mindful, and that I would respond to the situation as best as I could. And so he said, and so rather than a philosophical position about I would do X, Y, Z, that he thought, well, in real life, you don't know what you would do because it's a situation that hasn't happened. And so I feel that trusting in awareness and your readiness to take action if action is needed. I haven't had to run at anybody with an automatic weapon clutching my triangular cushion. I've thought about it. How far is it from here to the doorway, and which door would they come in? Yeah, so I have thought about it, but it hasn't happened yet. And then also, I feel that sense of you don't know what's possible. You don't know what might come to mind. And so that I feel having the basic principle clear in one's heart, and then just being mindful to each situation, then being guided by that's the best we can do. There's no formula for the right thing, because it changes moment by moment what the right thing might be. So I hope that's helpful. If only there was an almanac that says, here is the right thing to do. Just flick through the pages and find, okay, this is the situation. It tells you this is the right thing in this moment, but it's impossible. Yeah. Life is too fluid. So please, any other questions? Yes, one at the back there.
I wanted to ask you, is it okay to go to a supermarket and buy meat, or go to a butcher and buy meat, or get somebody else to do the killing for you so you can eat it?
Well, it's these are decisions that people can make for themselves. In terms of the precept, the panatipata, it's a deliberate action taken by an individual to end the life of another living being. So that in our monastic rule, that if we see, hear, or suspect that someone has deliberately taken the life of an animal or fish or a bird in order to offer it as food to the Sangha, then we should refuse it. But if we don't see or hear or suspect that something has been killed especially to be given to the Sangha, then we should accept it with appreciation. So it's not against the precepts to eat meat. It's part of the Buddha's his effort to make the Sangha easily supportable. So whatever people consider to be good food, then we're encouraged to be accepting and to appreciate people's kindness. But if people choose to be vegetarians or vegans, then that's entirely up to their own choice. And so it's a delicate area, but I would say it's very, very clear that the Buddha did not equate meat eating with breaking the first precept. It's a different dimension. And from his understanding and the way the teachings are presented and acted upon. Does that make sense? Could you hold the microphone a little closer? Yeah.
This may sound a personal question, but I am sure although there are no guests here who are in a situation like I am at the moment, but eventually one of you or two of you or whoever will face the same consequences that I am facing. Having been diagnosed once with cancer and being cured, I've had a second cancer coming up after 5 years. And I don't want to go into details of all that. I'm a medical person myself. But having not been that religious during my career, other than working and looking after the family and helping people, I find it extremely difficult not to know how to face the consequences of imminent death. It's an aggressive cancer, so they don't tell me, but I know that I don't have much time. And I want to know how Dhamma can help me.
Well, I would say every single person in this hall is facing the same situation. Everyone here is going to breathe out one day and not breathe in again. Every single person. No one gets off this boat alive. Right? And we forget that. And it's not a comforting or a cozy thought, but every single one of us, every one of these bodies, one day will breathe out and not breathe in again. Our lives will come to an end. That's not a surprise. It shouldn't be shocking, or it shouldn't be a weird thought. But it is. When we come into a room like this, oh, the Amaravati temple, it's such a beautiful sunny day. How nice to see everyone, and glad to be here. We don't think, oh, this is really nice to be here. Every one of us is going to die one day. We don't think like that, because we have a kind of forgettery as well as a memory. We have a sort of mental filter that screens that out. And even as a medical person, the treating of bodies and looking after the body, somehow it's out there, and it's not this body, this life, is somehow not part of the equation. And when it's really looked at closely, and the Dhamma teachings encourage that kind of close looking and recollection, then we're not surprised. So it's a bit of a blunt or a sort of brutal recollection, but the Buddha encourages what's called the 5 subjects of frequent recollection. I am of the nature to age, I am of the nature to sicken, I am of the nature to die. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I'm the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma, so on. So he encourages lay people and monastics to reflect upon that every day. So to our ego, that's really threatening, like, how depressing. Yeah, that's a really negative. For the ego, that's threatening and depressing. But for the heart, I would say the citta, that which is attuned to the quality of reality and wisdom, as I was describing earlier, there's this recognition of, well, of course, how could it be otherwise? You know, we are all older than we were when we came together this afternoon. Time is inexorably passing. And as we were talking earlier, you know, one of my experiences of studying physiology was, sometimes I'd come out of the lecture theatre just sort of having to hold on to the banister, like, how are any of us standing up and breathing, let alone walking or driving cars? You know, this body is so complicated. There's so many things that have to happen perfectly every second. How amazing that it works at all. So when we look at the living system with the eye of Dhamma, then we realize, oh, it's an incredibly fragile and delicate system. So it's amazing that it holds together as well as it does. So of course it can come to an end at any moment. Yeah, one of the very dedicated attendees of these Sunday talks, Nevin, used to go to almost every single Amaravati Lay Buddhist Association event. He came to many Sunday talks. Would often come up with marvelously pointed, challenging questions at these Sunday talks. Nevin, he literally dropped dead several weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, just without a lot of warning, as I understand it. His life came to an end and passed away, and so it's quite a shock. But to the people around him, hopefully he was prepared. He'd been in many Dhamma teachings. So in a way, it's rather like your medical training and doing your exams. You do your homework, you do your revision before the exams. And so in terms of Dhamma helping us, it's like, okay, here's the homework, do the homework and you'll be prepared when you're in the exam room. You won't be facing the paper and have nothing to say. It's like, okay, I've prepared myself. If every day I recollect this body is subject to aging, to sickness and death, then that's not comforting or pleasant to think about, but it's realistic to think about. So that then the actuality of sickness and physical death, then it's not held in a framework of something that has gone wrong, but rather nature is taking its course. There are aspects which are unpleasant. You seem to be very functional and mobile and able to be eloquent in your speech. But as diseases progress, often we become less mobile. Our faculties go, our speech goes, and thinking and so forth. So as those go, again, rather than thinking, oh, this is something that's wrong, it shouldn't be this way, this isn't fair. Instead, the mind holds it, okay, there goes another one. I used to be able to walk, now I need an arm to lean on. Like Lumpur Sumedho, he can't walk by himself anymore. He needs an arm to lean on. He's 90. He's got a lot of damage to his lymph system. His legs are quite swollen. His feet are quite numb. he can't walk by himself. So he leans on Ajahn Amaro, or another of the monks. So he has 4 legs instead of 2 to get about. And so he doesn't make that a problem. Because, okay, I'm 90 years old, my legs don't work so well, my balance is not good, my vision is poor, so I need an arm to hold on to get from A to B. Okay, there's 4 legs that work rather than just 2. That's what we work with. So that attitude of adaptability, and as the faculties go, rather than thinking something's gone wrong or it shouldn't be this way, is seeing that this is nature doing its thing. And how fortunate it's worked as well as it has done for as long as it has. But if we prepare ourselves, do our homework, then when those things fade away and those faculties are gone, or the life force is disappearing, then the heart is at ease. The citta is at home with that. There isn't that sense of wrongness, and that's the real dukkha. In terms of the Buddha's teaching, there's a short teaching of his called the arrow, the Salla Sutta, number 6 in the I think it's in the Vedana Samyutta, in the Samyutta Connected Discourses. The arrow. So the first arrow is that of physical pain. Nobody can avoid that. If you're a living being, there's going to be pain. Whether you're an ignorant being, you're a pratujana, or you're a fully enlightened arahant, even the Buddha himself, and he had chronic back pain. He said that at the beginning of the discourse about the ending of his life, he said, "My body is like an old cart held together with strings and straps, and the only way I can feel any kind of comfort is to completely disconnect my mind from the sense world, to absorb into emptiness." If he was paying attention to the body and to seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, he was in pain. And so, so that first arrow, nobody can avoid being struck by. The second arrow is the resenting, negotiating, worrying, the agitation around that physical pain. That is completely avoidable. So when we talk about the ending of dukkha, the ending of suffering, it's all the second arrow, not the first. The first arrow is unavoidable. The second arrow is completely avoidable. So that even as there's more pain in the body and the faculties are going, then we, like the Buddha himself, we take action. So as I've mentioned a number of times, I'm very impressed how the suttas record the Buddha giving a Dhamma talk late in the evening. He'll say to Ananda or Sariputta or Mahakachana, say, "Kachana, my back is paining me. I'm going to lie down and stretch it. The assembly is still awake. Please carry on giving them a Dhamma talk." So the Buddha himself, the Lord Buddha, would interrupt his own Dhamma talk to go and lie down and stretch his back and hand over the Dhamma seat to one of the other monks. So the assembly is still wide awake. People are paying attention. It's a good opportunity to listen to teachings. I'm going to go and stretch my back because it's painful. You carry on giving a teaching. So he had the experience of pain. He took action to alleviate it, but he didn't make a problem out of that. So that in treating an illness, taking the medication, carrying out the procedures we need to. Like the reason why I'm always wearing a hat is because I had melanoma 25 years ago. So the prescription from the dermatologist is don't let the sun touch your skin ever again. In England, that's not too difficult. That was 4 months after I arrived in California. So I had to get used to wearing a sun hat, sunscreen, gloves, and having sunshades with me to travel in cars. And so I have a whole procedure keeping out of the sun. So I do that because I try to protect the body, but I don't make a problem out of it. So, in terms of using the teaching to help your situation, I think that just bringing that attention to the attitude of when the mind brings up that thought, it shouldn't be this way, or this isn't fair, or why me, just to catch that thought and to reflect, well, why not me? It's everybody else. Why should this one be different? And that's a kind of a blunt, a kind of harsh reflection, but it's also, of course, On the other side of that, there's that natural wisdom that says, of course, why should this life be different than all the people I've been treating for so many years? Oh, yes, of course. And so then, even though the illness is still there and the discomfort or inconveniences are still there, the mind doesn't have to make a problem out of all the inconveniences. Like, I feel Luang Por Sumedho is an absolutely shining example. He can only see about 2 meters. Beyond about if someone is like 3 meters away, he'll say, hello, Luang Por, and he'll say, who is it? And then, oh, it's Susan, it's Paddy, it's Savitri. Oh, hello. Yeah. At that distance, he can't see, but he doesn't make a problem out of it. He's or having to use a person to lean on to walk. It's just that. That's the kind of the precepts he needs to follow. That's the limitation he's working with. But within that framework, then his mind is quite free, quite at ease. So, if there's any other questions, we've got time for 1 or 2 more.
Thank you. My question is about abortion, which is potentially killing a potential human being, or perhaps, according to Buddhism, I don't know, a human being already living. What is the stance of Buddhism around people that have had abortion intentionally?
Well, in terms of our monastic rule, it's very clear that even if it's a very, very newly formed fetus, if you encourage an abortion and the abortion is carried out, then that's breaking the precept and deliberately taking a human life. So for us, as a monastic, it's a very, very serious precept. For lay people, I think it's important for people to consider as fully as possible the situation they're in, and to see this is, and from the Buddhist perspective, this is a human life, and that there's various different scientific interpretations or readings of it, but from the Buddha's teaching, it's like as soon as the zygote forms, as soon as the life has begun, then it's considered a human being from the very get-go. So, as monastics, we're not allowed to encourage abortion or speak about advantages of it at all. If someone has already had an abortion, and that's sort of part of their life, and it's a decision they've made, then it's also something to be practicing forgiveness around, and to be letting go of. In Japan, they have a very strong culture for babies that have either been aborted or have been miscarried, stillbirths. So in many, many Buddhist temples, they have a whole little graveyard, and one of the bodhisattvas, Jizo Bodhisattva Kishtigarbha, is a sort of protector of unborn children, and so they have like a little garden. They call them water babies. I think is that correct? Yeah, water babies. They have a whole little kind of graveyard and memorials, and even if there's no body there, people have a memorial for the child that they lost, or was aborted, or was stillborn, or who was miscarried. And so I feel that's very skillful as a way of recollecting that there was a life and it came to an end. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, or what the circumstances were, this life came to an end, but it's not ignored, it's respected and remembered. And so I feel that's a very, very skillful tradition in the Japanese Buddhist world. It's, I think, strongest in Japan than any other Buddhist culture. And I feel that's something very, very wise, very helpful in order for those who are still alive or who've been close, or the mother of that child in particular, but the family, to be able to honor that life, even though it was so brief or so partially formed, to acknowledge that and to be also sharing blessings with that being in whatever state they might be. But so it's I know again, like vegetarianism, it's a very tender issue, and there's very strong feelings around it. So, but that's it would very much come under the first precept, panatipata, deliberately taking life, and deliberately taking a human life is something of great karmic consequence. Just as areas of euthanasia or assisted suicide and so on, there's also very delicate areas where there's a lot of moral questions. But again, for monastics, any kind of recommending of death or advantages in death, or encouraging taking life or encouraging others to take life. So if I encourage someone to have an abortion as soon as they had it, then I wouldn't be a monk anymore. I think that would end my monastic life. It's one of the most serious rules. So in the Buddha's teaching, that a human life has a much greater karmic weight and karmic value than of other living beings, and so that because of our nature of being part of the human realm, and so that I feel it's important to consider and to sort of take to heart all those different factors. So I hope that's helpful. So we have, if there's any other questions, we have time for one more. There's I think a woman at the back there. You look like you got a question. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn. So we are coming from a war zone. And,
can you hold the microphone a little closer? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So we are coming from a war zone, and I'm not sure what the question is, but we just was involved today in new news. So it's here now, and I guess something it's like our life get changed in very extreme way in the last year almost, and maybe some optimistic word in relative to how to deal with the situation, the daily life, or how to think about the future in that area of the world.
I didn't catch the detail of that. So where have you come from? I don't know your history or your.
We are coming from Israel.
From Israel.
Israel.
Uh-huh. Well, there are not simple answers. I think we have as human beings, the society that we're born into is part of what we are. But it's to me, it's interesting that the vast majority of the Buddha's teaching focuses not upon our family background or our national background, but our own capacity as individuals to make choices, and that where the focus of his teaching and encouragement is like, pay attention to what you say, what you do, the attitudes that are held in this life. This is where we have agency. And so that it's not that we're disconnected from society or not part of different social groups. The Buddha did refer to him being a kshatriya or being a Sakyan, and there are references to that. But the vast majority of his teaching is the differences we can make with our attitudes, our words, our actions in this life. So I would say, maybe you come from Israel. I have family in Israel, in Tel Aviv and in En-Gev on the Kinneret. I have 5 generations now of my family who are kibbutzniks under the Golan Heights, and so that particularly intense situation there between the Israeli people, Palestinian people, and the conflict going on, that is a very sort of painful and destructive situation. But it's also, I'm not belittling that, but around the world there are many other situations of war and conflict that some get more attention in the press and some get less. So like, for example, in Yemen, the people in Yemen have been suffering from great oppression for years and years and years, but they don't get onto the front pages. Anyway, or in China, the Uyghur people, the oppression of the Uyghur folks. There's certain areas attention is steered to by the media, and some it's not. But it's in all of these areas of conflict or oppression of various different kinds. I would say, at least from my own practice and from the Buddha's teaching, it comes down to what can we as individuals do with this life, this mind, this capacity to speak, our interactions with other people, the work that we do, our interactions with the world. That's where we can make a difference. So the encouragement is to have 90% of the attention on your speech, your action, your attitudes, your state of mind, and working with that to guide that towards what's wholesome, what's beneficial, what's producing benefit, and the other 10% for the for the rest. And that I mean, those are obviously very rough numbers, but I feel it's really significant that if we make the effort to make a difference in our own life, then the natural ripple effect of that, then when we are speaking to other people, the work that we choose to do, the interactions that we have, then they are going to be, to the greatest extent possible, beneficial to those people, those situations. And once in a while, maybe something that we do or that we say can make a big difference. Can make a significant difference, but sometimes it might seem to be something very small. But and it is, I would say, it's not a selfish intention, but I feel that the Buddha was extraordinarily wise and skillful, and he knew that the more that each individual can cultivate the wholesome and let go of the unwholesome, can get a genuine sense of what is beneficial, what's workable in the world. And then using their life for that purpose, then the more that their own life and the world will be benefited. And so that's the principle. And maybe just to share a last teaching. It's also a kind of a contrast between the southern Buddhist approach and the northern Buddhist approach. There's a short sutta called the Acrobats. And it took place in a town called Siddhaka. It's called the Siddhaka Sutta, or the Bamboo Acrobats. And the Buddha tells a story of how there was these street performers, like you still see in India today. Actually, I used a picture of one of them on the cover of one of our books. And so it's a bamboo acrobat. So you have the father who has a bamboo pole and a little daughter. And the little daughter's called Frying Pan, is her name. It doesn't say why she's called Frying Pan, but that's her name is Metakalika, is Frying Pan. Somehow that's her nickname. And so he says to the daughter, the dad, like, you climb up the pole, perform your tricks, and I'll look out for you, you look out for me, and that way you'll be able to perform your tricks on the pole very well. Climbing up, he would balance the pole on one finger or one hand, and the daughter would climb up and do her performance at the end of the pole. It's a kind of balancing act. And he said, I'll look out for you, you look out for me, and that way you'll be able to climb up the pole, do your tricks, and get down safely, and we'll get a good fee from the crowd. And she said, no, Father, you are wrong. I'll look out for me, and you look out for you, and that's the way I'll be able to climb up the pole, do my tricks, and climb down safely. And then the Buddha says, in this case, the child is correct and the adult is incorrect. That's the way it should be. And he says, so, and how do we take care of ourselves? he said, by practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Because by taking care of ourselves, we most effectively take care of others. And then to complete the picture, so that's sort of point number 1, or the primary point. The secondary point, he says, but also by protecting others, we also protect ourselves. And how is it that by protecting others, we protect ourselves? But it's definitely in a secondary position. He says, by practicing kindness, sympathy, patience, and harmlessness. Then we protect others, and we also protect ourselves through that. But looking after our own stuff and our own mind, our own life is the primary concern. So that I would say, if what can you do to help the situation in Israel? The first thing is working with your mind, moment by moment, learning to be focused, to be peaceful, to dwell in qualities of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and serenity, and to be cultivating wisdom. And then the knock-on effects of that will take whatever shape they can, considering the relationships you have, the role you have, the work you do, and so on and so forth. So I think that's enough. We've trickled past 4 o'clock, so let's leave it there for today, and for these thoughts for consideration for everyone.